It's a $142 billion deal, which is actually the largest arms deal in U.S. history. So quite significant, I would say.
President Trump has signed a deal with Saudi Arabia, described by the White House as the largest defence sales agreement in history, worth £107 billion. It includes providing Saudi Arabia with state-of-the-art war-fighting equipment and services from over a dozen US defence firms. President Trump lavished praise on the Saudi Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman.
The US-Saudi relationship has been a bedrock of security and prosperity. Today we reaffirm this important bond, and we take the next steps to make our relationship closer, stronger, and more powerful than ever before. It is more powerful than ever before.
Well, President Trump's also announced he's removing sanctions from Syria and will meet its new leader, President Ahmed al-Sharaa, tomorrow. Trump also said he hoped that Saudi Arabia would join the Abraham Accords to normalise relations with Israel. But beyond that, there's been little discussion so far of the war in Gaza. Tonight, the Hamas-run authorities in Gaza have said an Israeli airstrike on the European hospital in Khan Yunis has killed 28 people and injured dozens more. Well, Simone Ledeen is a former US Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East under Donald Trump. Good evening to you, Simone.
Good evening.
Great to have you with us. First of all, that big arms sale deal with Saudi Arabia, clearly a long-standing ally of the US. How significant do you think this agreement is?
It's a $142 billion deal, which is actually the largest arms deal in U.S. history. So quite significant, I would say.
And that will clearly help President Trump as he seeks to boost the US economy. Many people, though, had been hoping that President Trump's presence in the Middle East might bring about new moves to end the war in Gaza, particularly after we saw the release of that last American hostage yesterday. Do you think there is many discussion, much going on behind the scenes on that front?
I think clearly there is much discussion going on behind the scenes on that front. The president, the president touched on a couple of important and not direct but related points, such as the potential for Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords, which obviously would require them to recognize the existence of the State of Israel. And Saudi has publicly stated its position on that, hinges on certain accessions in Gaza and for the Palestinian people. So we'll see if that takes place. I think indirectly, it's clear that these discussions are taking place, and we also see the president's Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, who's been in Israel during this time. And surely there's a lot of behind the scenes discussions and diplomacy going on there.
And we're hearing that an Israeli delegation could be in Doha tomorrow. But there are also reports, aren't there, that the Americans, that President Trump himself is feeling somewhat frustrated with Benjamin Netanyahu, who is himself under increasing pressure, a lot of international criticism and condemnation of the blockade of Gaza, the lack of supplies getting in, and this renewed offensive that's forcing thousands of Palestinians to leave their homes once again. Do you think President Trump could be preparing to really face up to Prime Minister Netanyahu in order to try to get that peace that he's talked about in Gaza?
If I'm not mistaken, the latest the latest step towards peace in Gaza was rejected by Hamas. And this was something known as the Witkoff Plan that Israel has agreed to for a long time now. So I think, in any protracted negotiation like this, there's a lot of direct and loud messaging, but there's also a lot of sort of indirect influence messaging. And I think we are seeing quite a lot of that right now. There's a lot of rumors, and then people are getting upset on social media. And then, one or the other kind of formal voices for some of these people have to come out and say that news report is not true, that rumor is not true. So for me personally, and I'm just a spectator like everyone else at this point, I am looking to the official notifications, the official messages, and there's just a lot of what the president would call fake news out there. And so I really, unless I see it and unless it's announced, I tend to sort of not believe it.
Yeah, but what President Trump was talking about was his wider vision of greater peace across the Middle East and the potential that that would bring for greater prosperity, as well as, of course, the benefits of peace. But doesn't that require the US to get involved and put more pressure on the Israelis to move towards a solution in Gaza?
Well, yes, I agree that there is quite a lot of optimism right now, and optimism around economic growth, not just for us in the United States, but for our partners and allies. Just to reiterate, the Israelis have agreed to the terms that were put forward by the president's Middle East envoy. It's the other party in this equation, Hamas, that has not agreed to that. So I don't know in that construct what benefit it would be to pressure Prime Minister Netanyahu, who has already agreed to the terms. Do you see what I mean? So I think this is sort of the conundrum right now, and it's easy to paint Prime Minister Netanyahu as, the bad guy, but this situation is quite fluid and complex. I know the president talked about the requirement for humanitarian activities to increase in Gaza to help the residents of Gaza. That's an imperative, and the president has said that. But again, for there to be peace, which is what I think most people in this scenario want, um, the other party, i.e., Hamas, has to come to an agreement as well. And unfortunately, for all this time, as long as this horrible war has continued, they have refused to make peace and to have any sort of protracted ceasefire. And that's has led us to where we are today. It's very, very unfortunate, especially for the Palestinian people and the Israeli hostages, some of whom, have been there for several years now, unfortunately.
Simone Ledeen, former US Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense. Great to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.